All right, there we go. And my name is Matt Kingsley. I'm the Culturally Responsive Coordinator at Tigard High School. I just started in my position this week, and I'm happy to be here. My other co-host, Octavia, is hopefully going to join us later, but she had to attend to something right now. I've got some slides just to go through, and then we're going to open it up for our attendees to ask some questions to the SRO officers. All right, so bear with me here. So we're going to introduce the officers and then also the new scope of work that the district is rolling out in addition to those questions and answers. Before we do that though, I'd like everybody in the meeting to follow this prompt to introduce yourself and what lens you bring to this committee and what you commit to as we collectively do this work. And we use a protocol called the Art of Community just to get grounded as a group, and it helps the flow of the meeting. It's like agreements and acknowledgments that help our communication as we meet together. So I'll just read those quickly out to you, and then I'd like you to introduce yourself and commit to one of these things that you see under the Art of Community today. And those are that we acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversations. We strive to be in community with one another with care. We try to stay curious about each other. We recognize that we need each other's help to become better listeners. We slow down so we have time to think and reflect. We remember that conversation is a natural way we think together. We expect it to get messy at times, and we will listen with intention to learn something new. And I, for example, so I said, my name is Matt Kingsley. I'm going to give my introduction and then just say I'm going to commit to this last item here on Art of Community. I'm going to say I'm going to commit to listening with intention to learning something new today. So Christy, would you like to go next?
So I think that we recognize that we need each other's help to become better listeners. I, for one, wanted to be part of this just because my son has shown, he has shown a lot of interest in becoming a Tigard police officer, and he's actually, because of COVID and everything, hasn't been able to do much with the cadet program, but I think what you guys are doing is amazing, and I support you guys 100%.
Thanks, Christy. Mary Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Ellen, and I am here. I don't know what the last point is, so I'm doing this on my phone, so it's hard for me to read. But just listening to learn something new, because I am brand new working in the district. I'm also a parent of 3 kiddos in the district, and I am really interested to hear what role the SROs play and to hear what we can do as parents and staff to help out and support it. So just here to learn something.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. And what school are you at?
I work at Deer Creek.
Deer Creek. Okay, great. And then Shannon?
Hi, I'm Shannon Ely. I'm a health assistant here at Tigard High School. And I was gonna do We Strive to Be in community with one another with care. And so that kind of describes a little bit about what I do. Like, I interact with the kids when they're either hurt or not feeling well. And so kind of just treating them with care and compassion, and that I'm another adult in the building that is here to support them.
That's great. And so we can move on to the introduction of the 3 SRO officers that are here. Let's see, I've got your pictures here. Do we want to start with Officer Nunn?
Sure. So I'm Officer Nunn. I have been with the Tigard Police Department for 15 years. been law enforcement for going almost 22 years, so 21 years. This is my second stint as an SRO. I started back last year when school started. I was at Tigard High. I had taken a couple years off and I was working patrol. But prior to that, I was the SRO at Fowler, Metzger, Mary Woodward, and St. Anthony's. So this is my second go around. This will be what, year 6 as an SRO.
All right, Officer Brian Imus. I've been with Tigard Police for about 13 years. This is also my second stint as an SRO. I was at Tigard High School from 2016 to 2020 when the pandemic hit, and then back to patrol, and now I'm primarily at Tualatin.
That leaves me. I'm Officer John Mehring. I work at Fowler Middle School. Obviously, I'm in my 4th year there. I've been with Tigard Police for 11 years, and that's kind of is my first run. I'm the only one. It's my first run at SROing. So,
Thanks for those introductions. And would the three of you go through and select something from Art of Community that you commit to?
I'll start with mine, and maybe not is the entire sense of what its intentions are up there. Strive to be in community with one another with care. For me, that's something I strive for. I live in Tigard. I work in Tigard, obviously. I coach sports teams, both my daughter's team, my son's team. So I strive to be part of the community. I don't know if that's what the intention of that is, but I strive to be part of the community with what I'm working with, and it goes beyond my work and my living to kind of intermingle with each other.
For me, I think we expect it to get messy at times. Being in this business, that's definitely part of the nature of the business, and we expect, there could be people with tough questions about what we're doing in the schools, and looking forward to sharing that and going from there.
And I'll choose. We acknowledge that we bring our lived experiences into our conversation. I think we all have quite a bit, as far as the three of us, quite a bit of experience as police officers, as school resource officers. But not only that, we're all parents. So we bring that into the conversation as well, not just as a cop, but as a parent as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all of that. And I appreciate you all sharing the agreements that you commit to today. So the next piece is just to go over quickly there are 5 themes to the new scope of work that's going to be happening with SROs in the district. And I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I'll leave each one up for about a minute and just read what the theme is. So the first theme is on relationship development, focal communities, for example, communities of color, students with disabilities, students in foster care, and students navigating basic needs insecurities is the theme of the first scope. And I'll just put it up for a minute and let you read the rest. Okay, so I hope that was enough time. I should mention also that if reading these, the new scope generates any questions, please make a note of the question, because we're going to get to questions right after we review these. So that was the first theme, relationship development. The second theme of the new scope is communication and transparency. And once again, I'll put it up for about 40 seconds and give you some time to browse that over. Okay, does anybody need more time with that? All right, we'll go over to our third theme, which is to address the impact of uniform and gear. Okay, if anybody feels like they need more time looking at that, let me know. I'll move on then to the fourth theme, which is, sorry, there we are, health and safety. Okay, let me know if you need more time on that. And then we'll just review the last theme of the new scope of the work, which is professional development. And again, I'll give you 40 seconds just to review that. All right. So I want to, first of all, open it up to questions from our attendees. So Christy, Mary Ellen, and Shannon, this is a time for you to ask our officers here questions about what they do. Any questions related to the new scope of the work? And yeah, please feel free to just jump in and ask your questions. And then afterwards, if there's time permitting, I mean, we do have an hour, but there are some other prepared questions from the community that we can get to once you're done. So Christy or Mary Ellen or Shannon, any questions? Okay. Christy?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. I was just, Christy put in the chat that she didn't have any questions right now. I was just interested in listening. Yep.
Yeah, I was just curious, are you at the school the whole school day, or do you kind of come and go?
So for me, I'm primarily at Tualatin Middle School, but we also have responsibilities with elementary schools as well as me and Officer Marin. So there's times I'll be at Templeton or Durham Elementary or Alberta Ryder. And there's also 3 of us who have different schools, right? So if one of us might be out on training or out sick for the day, whatever, then we kind of all have to cover each other's schools. So there's times where we're at different schools, but during the bulk of the time, if I'm available, I'm at Tualatin Middle School, Officer Nunn's at Tigard High School, and Officer Marion's at Fowler Middle School.
But the schools will call any of us. If they can't get a hold of one of us, they'll call. The district also calls us if they have an issue. The district calls us directly as opposed to calling our dispatch center. So typically we're at the schools, but our assigned schools, but we can jump around depending on what the need is.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes sense.
I'll throw out one more thing real quick on that too, is that we're at the schools, but we're also still police officers. So if there's a call nearby in the neighborhood, like I left last week for a CPR call that was like a half mile away from the school. So obviously I had an emergency situation that was nearby. So I got my patrol car and I headed that direction to try to help.
And I think that also goes to one of the scopes of work about our uniforms, because there was big talk about our uniform. And one thing that was brought up consistently by the chief, ourselves, and our command staff was we have to be in uniform because we're still police officers. And if there's an emergency, we have to be able to respond, because there was talk about, why do you guys have to be in uniform? Well, we're in a marked patrol vehicle, and if something happens, we have to be able to jump in our vehicle and respond. So that goes to the point of part of our uniform is we still have to be able to respond.
That was going to be my second question, was about the focus about uniform. I was going to ask, does that mean you're going out of uniform? No, that means you'll be staying in uniform.
We're still in uniform. Yeah, our uniform hasn't changed because there's a couple aspects to that. One, we need to be able to respond. And the second thing the chief brought up during this whole work scope was she wants kids to start, and young adults to start, seeing us in the schools and feeling comfortable with us, so that when they see us in the real world out there taking calls, I can say from experience that I've gone to calls for service where it was a kid that I used to work with in the schools. And when I show up and he recognizes me in the same uniform that I was at in the school as I am now, like in this case, it was a domestic between his parents. When I showed up, he knew me. He knew my uniform. It was the same. And there was that comfort level where there was kind of that concern that, well, if we change uniforms, then you look different than the next officer. And so when that next officer shows up, that some people might think, well, that person's different. I'm used to Officer Nunn, who wears khakis and a polo shirt. So this officer, even though, it's one of my partners, that guy looks different than Officer Nunn. So we wanted that comfort of kids to get familiar with us in the same uniform at school as we would be outside the school. So that was one of the other reasons for staying in the same uniforms.
I'll tell you what, too, it starts a lot of conversations with kids. I'm sure Officer Marion will echo that, is that I get asked several times a day, what's that on your uniform? What's that on your belt? And kids are very interested to know what we carry and why and everything. So it helps them understand.
High school kids just want to tase each other. So
That totally makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Mary Ellen. Anybody else? We can move on to the questions that have been submitted, and at any time, Christy or Shannon or Mary Ellen, if you come up with a question you want to ask, just please interrupt and feel free to ask it. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So the first question was, how would you describe the role of the SROs right now in our current situation?
So how would we describe the role of the SROs right now? I would describe it as a resource for the schools. I think that hasn't changed. The schools at any point, they can bounce ideas, ask questions of us. So we're really just a resource for them, to just another resource. And I don't know if that's changed a lot. That's pretty much it. We're a resource. We try to stay out of school discipline. If there is a question, they might come to us and ask. But as far as school discipline, we try to stay out of the school discipline. We do a lot of, at least for I do, DHS reports, concerns about students at home. There's been lots of abuse reports. So I do a lot of that stuff at the school. I can tell these two, having worked in elementary and middle school, it's a lot of DHS stuff.
One thing I'd talk about is school safety. A lot of people just think about like physical safety of the school, right? That kind of thing, and that's important. Obviously, it's we're a presence there to help keep the school safe. But safety to me also means, are the kids being safe with each other? Is the school, drug and alcohol free, so there's a safe learning environment? Are bullying aspects of a school? The internet stuff that kids get into with social media these days. And then as Officer Nunn mentioned, are the kids safe at home? And if we are there and become a trusted resource for the kids, they might be able to come forward with something where it might not be a, quote unquote school safety issue, but it could be an issue where they're unsafe in the community too. And they can come to us for help with that.
Thanks. Anything else to add to that one? All right. We can move on to the next one. What training do SROs receive in terms of equity and cultural awareness for the parents and families that they interact with?
Overall, we have the basic training that we go through as police officers, which includes a lot of this equity and cultural awareness, especially, have in the last couple of years, everything that's gone on, we've done a lot more of that. We also receive, as SROs, once we're selected as SROs, we go through a week-long SRO class that is taught by the National Association of School Resource Officers. So it is a week-long class that is specific towards SROs and officers that are working in schools. So we go through a lot of that training. And then recently, all three of us today were in our professional development at our schools. So that's kind of a new aspect. I can say the last time I was an SRO, we didn't participate in that professional development in the schools. We did our training, the schools did their training. So I think there's a little bit more focus on us being a part of the school training. So nothing bad.
I feel like we've really been more in the last year and a half. We've been more entwined with the school and being aware of these things and kind of better solutions to handle things. I think we've been more involved behind the scenes and on the front in working more directly with the schools, kind of like what Nick said. Getting involved more with the schools together and solving problems and being aware of things.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. The next question is, can you describe a moment that you have been most proud of personally while serving the school community?
I'll start with one. It's funny, Nick mentioned it kind of earlier. I had one very similar. in the schools, we build relationships with lots of different kids, and some, we feel like we're better than others. And I had one where I got called to a domestic when I was not working in the schools. It was during the summer break. I was over, I was working actually graveyard shift, which is the night shift. And I got dispatched to a house I didn't know was one of my students' house. I didn't know that at all, but I get there and it's 2 a.m. and I'm greeted by a student who I knew her first name, but I didn't feel like we were super close. I didn't have I didn't chat with her a lot, but I didn't know who she was. And she was distraught and devastated because there was a domestic at her house, and she immediately came out and gave me a hug and said, "Oh God, I'm so glad it's you, Officer John." And I was like, that's pretty awesome. That's from a relationship that we had at school, that she trusted me. And to see her say, "I'm so glad it was you," that meant a lot. It means, I kind of solved that problem just by being there for her. Nobody went to jail or anything. So it was something that just me being there made her feel instantly relaxed. She went from hysterical to happy, and it's just something that meant a lot to me, seeing that. So that was just one small one. You have lots of small wins in the school, lots of little things, I'm sure. It sounds like most of you or all of you are involved in the school or educators at schools. You know the small wins. Those are awesome as well. They're not something you write down on paper, but you're just like, okay, I'm making a difference. That's a good thing. That kid remembers me, or that kid, I've seen them making change, making progress about stuff we've discussed. Those small little wins are awesome to see.
For me, when I worked at the high school, I remember a student that was very anti-police, very vocal about that. I tried to talk to him one time, and he said, "I'm not talking to you." I asked his name. He said, "I'm not going to give you my name." Just had very negative outlook on police. And I tried to, smile at him in the halls and say hi, even though it wasn't being reciprocated. And he's also a student that was, struggling academically and, wasn't necessarily on the right track to graduate and everything. And he was involved in an incident at school where, I had to get involved in the incident as well. And I was able to have him in my office and have some one-on-one time where we were kind of more or less forced to talk. And he opened up to me during that time. We were in there like an hour. And as an SRO, you have the time to spend with these kids, whereas patrol officer may not. So they're able to take the time and get to know him. And he had some laughs with me, some cries, and from there on, our relationship completely changed. And I was able to get to know him pretty well. And he was, he came up to me on graduation day. He graduated and thanked me for everything. And that made me super proud that I kind of, maybe changed his outlook on police and helped him have a positive experience and be successful in high school.
And I think mine's similar. I know I've worked in I've been in some classes where there was, some disruption and some kids were going off, and I would show up and the teacher's like, yeah, he's having a meltdown right now. And I can think of one where the kid was throwing chairs and just having a meltdown. And they're like, I don't know if you should go in there. I opened the door and, saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he immediately put the chair down. And I said, "Now start picking this stuff up." And because I had that relationship, it wasn't confrontational. He's like, "Okay, I didn't mean it." And he starts picking the chairs up. And I had that conversation with him, and he was like, I just got mad. And so we had that conversation of, I understand you're mad, but you can't start throwing chairs and, they're clearing classrooms and stuff. We can't be doing this. And, he sat down with me and had a conversation and just kind of mellowed out. So I think you built that relationship where just my mere presence walking in and go, "Put the chair down," and he immediately did it. So.
Great. Yeah, thank you for all those answers. The next one is related to an issue that you brought up earlier, but maybe just framed a little differently. How would you respond, or what would you say to a student, family, or staff member that feels intimidated or unsafe by your presence and what appears to be militarized gear you carry?
Yeah, and we touched on this a little bit, and I think the biggest thing is an understanding that from their point of view that maybe this stuff looks intimidating and can be kind of scary because, to somebody that's not wearing it every day, that I can understand how that would be. But making sure they understand why, I think, like they said, explaining the stuff that's that we're carrying, that's on our vests, that's on our duty belts, and explaining this is what this is what we use it for, just so they have an understanding of what it is. Because if you just look at it, it can be intimidating. But if you kind of give an explanation of what it's used for, I think that helps. I know they talk a lot about, and in fact, when we were talking about SROs, they were calling them, the tactical vests. And why do you guys wear tactical vests? And I think once we sat down and explained to them that they're not really tactical vests, they're considered load-bearing vests, because each one of our vests with all our gear on it weighs 20, 30 pounds. We would still be carrying that gear even if we didn't have those vests on. The big advantage of these vests is it spreads the weight out. They can look a little bit more intimidating, but one of the biggest issues police have as far as health issues are bad backs. We have officers that have to medically retire because their backs are so bad. And a lot of it is because of all the gear we have to carry. And it seems like I've done this for 20 years. We get more and more gear when they determine, when I started, we didn't carry tasers. Tasers have now been invented as a less lethal way of detaining somebody, so that maybe we don't have to use our firearm. And so when I first started, we didn't wear tasers. Now we wear tasers. When I first started, we didn't have the medical equipment that we have now. We're all medically trained. So gear that's on our vest, people might see that as a big, is that a weapon? No, that's actually medical gear. In case somebody gets hurt, we carry medical trauma kits on us. So just explaining the gear that we carry and what it's used for, I think helps a lot in these type of situations that people are intimidated by the gear.
And I'll tie in with what Nick said, it's saying it's communication. So when somebody has questions about what we're wearing, I understand that people may feel intimidated by it or think it's military gear. Come talk to us. I think communication has been lost in some regards in a lot of this, and especially in the last couple of years. Come talk to us about it. I know that may be intimidating or maybe whatever, and then just like we may be intimidated to have some tough conversations that we've had to have in the last couple of years, but we're trying to have those and trying to discuss and understand other people's viewpoints. So I would just ask anybody that has those things, come ask us about it. We can explain why we carry them, what it is. Like Nick said, most of it's medical gear. It's stuff to help people than it is anything else. And so it's a matter of just opening lines of communication, which can be difficult at times, but those difficult conversations probably need to happen, right?
I'll share a quick story about today, actually. We had training at the schools. We broke out in small groups where you're able to share some personal things about yourself. And so some of the staff, since I'm brand new at Tualatin, I haven't had a chance to get to know beyond, waving at them down the halls, right? So sharing some personal stuff. And at the end, after I shared some things, one of the teachers said, I didn't know if having SROs anymore was a good idea in the schools, but after getting to know you, I have no problem with telling kids they can go up to you with any issues. And that just meant a ton to me. And I told the teacher that means a lot that he would share that. And I told him that I would stop saying bad things about him to the kids as well. He kind of laughed. And but yeah, that meant a lot. And that goes to what Officer Marion was saying, is that, we got to know each other a little bit more and got a better understanding of what I'm about, who I am, and why I'm there. And the communication kind of breakthrough maybe changed his perspective a little bit about our presence in the school.
And I think going along with that, one of the things that's important to realize that some people that haven't communicated with us or haven't been a part of this ongoing process is, I think some people think that the SROs are just assigned that, we got somebody that needs to go to the high school. Hey, Officer Nunn, you're going. This is something we all chose. There's a process for being selected as an SRO. We're not just, the command staff doesn't just walk into the briefing one day and say, hey, you're going to go work in the high school. This is a process. We all went through interview process and were selected because this is something we wanted to do. So I think that kind of ties into that, this is something we wanted. So we wanted to work, and we strive to kind of make it so that this is something that everybody wants and feels comfortable in.
That's great. I appreciate all those answers. Thank you. Next question is, let me check in just with Shannon, Christy, and Mary Ellen. Have any of you thought of additional questions you'd like to ask? Okay, well, we can proceed with the few. Shannon, did you have something? Okay. So the next question that was submitted was, how have you taken student voice into consideration with your work? If you've had opportunities to meet with students and talk about that.
So I've been I've been involved in this process from the get-go. And so I've had a lot of, I guess I haven't got to meet with a lot of the students, but I've heard a lot of their comments. I was involved in the whole process when we were coming up with the new format of how SROs were going to work. So I've heard a lot of those comments. And, I've had a lot of conversations with Zinnia in the district office, and I've been involved in all of that. Unfortunately, because we're just now getting back into school, I don't think any of us have really been able to meet with any of these groups and talked with them. I know that is something going forward that we're going to work on. But I know last year, John and I were in the schools, but I mean, it was hit and miss as far as how many kids were there. And so there wasn't a lot of chances to meet with the different groups. But I think going forward, we're looking forward to being able to be speakers at some of the meetings and getting them. I think John pointed out one of the biggest things is communication, and being able to sit down and try to answer some of the questions that have come out of this process is going to be a really big. And I don't think we've really had an opportunity to unpack all those questions right now as of yet.
And I know at Fowler, right? It's usually near the end of the year. We do with all the 8th grade classes. I go in to all the different classes for a full class session and sit down and just do a question and answer session. We just sit down. They can ask me anything they want to ask me. Some are prepared questions, kind of like this, and some are just kind of off the cuff, and that's kind of listening to what they say, what they have to say, and then that's that dialogue, that communication of understanding. Half the time they go, oh, okay, now I know why you wear that, or oh, that's cool. And taking student voice into consideration, all of us have an open door policy, right? Where anybody can come up, talk to us anytime in our office. We encourage it. We like it because it's a great way for us to open to communication. But they only do that if we have that relationship with them, and we've gone out in the hallways and gave high fives and talked to students, and they trust us. If they're scared of us, it's tough for them to come into our office and ask us those hard questions, talk to us about their concerns. If we build those relationships by being present, being there, then they feel more comfortable. We can now take their voice into consideration because they're comfortable giving it. That's that communication again.
I concur.
Thanks, Brian.
So agreeable.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And I think our community will benefit from hearing this, your answers to these questions. There are a few more. We still have about 10 minutes. So let me just flip over here and we'll wrap it up with these few ones. And again, Shannon, Mary Ellen, Christy, feel free to jump in anytime. So we've I feel like we might have addressed the next one. What have your days looked like since being back in schools this fall? I believe we kind of answered that, but do you have anything else to add to that one?
I'll say we have hit on it. It's been fantastic. So last year was the little school we had was kind of rough for everybody.
Yeah.
It's good to get back in the schools and see the kids being more like kids again. It's kind of a little chaotic at times, but it's been good to see that. So the days since we've been back have been great for me. I know it's been good to get back in there and see the faces again and get back in there. So it's been fun.
Great. Anything else about that? Okay, moving on then. What part of the new structure would you say you're most excited about?
I would say getting a chance to meet with all the different groups within the schools. I know my first time as an SRO, we did some assemblies where I got to participate with everybody, but meeting with the different the groups, I look forward to that and getting to meet everybody and answer their questions. There was a lot of questions, like I mentioned, there's a lot of questions that came out. And I don't know if it's misunderstandings of what or not understanding what us as SROs were there for. So being able to meet with people and get those questions answered, that's what I look forward to. It was going through the process. I can tell you it was, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but listening to some of the questions and the concerns, and I wanted to immediately jump in and try to answer all those questions, and learning that it's kind of messy and that we need to let everybody have their first thoughts of what this process or what the SROs and what their thoughts of SROs was. And now I look forward to being able to answer some of those questions and meet with some of these people, some of the individuals that shared these, and communicate with them and get to know them and let them get to know me. I think that's what I look forward to.
For me, it's like we did today, the training with the staff. That's different as we've talked about, and that was a really good way to get in a smaller group of people and get to know them better, which in years past we haven't had the opportunity to do. So it was good to see what the teachers and staff were trained on and be a part of that and get that training as well, and to get to know the staff a little bit better that way as well.
And I'll echo exactly what Brian just said. I concur. I think that's great because I know they feel the same way. Most of the time we're in the schools, we feel like we're school staff. We're there working as a member of the school with the school staff in conjunction with. It's rare that we take a law enforcement hat, so to speak, in the schools. So it's nice now that it be part of the trainings and part of the discussions and part of progress we're making in the schools and be part of that team, because we've always felt like that's who we are, but we've kind of been different, outside of the trainings and the school stuff. So it's kind of nice to be part of that now. I don't know, for me, I've always felt like I'm part of the team, but we're not doing the same trainings together. To be part of that as a new thing has been great.
Great. And I know you've touched a bit on the next one as well, but maybe you have something additional to add. In what ways can you build positive relationships with students?
That's just being there. It's just, it takes being present every day in the schools, being open to listening to what the students have to say, and building the relationships, as you guys all know, can't be built in a day, or they take time, right? So it's being a consistent presence in the schools and a consistent positive influence in the schools. It takes time, and it takes that persistence over time before you can get that. And I think that's the biggest part, is having us in there every day and over time. And by the end of the year, you have kids coming talking to you that at the beginning of the year, like Brian said, wouldn't even acknowledge you or say a word to you. And that happened. That just takes time. So
I think just showing them a different side of police officers. Most people have an opinion. I mean, middle schoolers are a little young to watching the news and stuff. I don't know if they do. Some of them probably do, some don't. But just showing them a lighter side of being a police officer. I know that we all like to get out there in the hallways and interact with kids. Also, like during activity time and lunch, I'll go out and kick a soccer ball around or throw the football for the kids, and just show them a different side of police work, and that let them get to know me as a person and not just a police officer.
And another way to build positive relationships is following through, right? When kids because they have that trust in you, that relationship with you. When they come to you with a problem, even if it seems small, you can build that trust by listening to it and then acting on it. Maybe you can't do much, but you're listening to it and acknowledging their problem, their issues. Sometimes they're serious issues at home or with friends, and sometimes they're really, silly stuff. But taking those things, and that builds that trust when they come to us with an issue finally, not dismissing it, being there and taking it serious and doing our best to help them out when it happens.
And I can't beat that. They got it.
Perfect. Well, the last question is, how do you think the school communities can better understand the work that you do? You've already alluded to just the communication piece, needing to have that. And I think this is a good example of, reaching out to try to improve that communication. Anything else that you guys can think of as far as, improving understanding of your work within the community?
I think that's going to be key, is the communicating between the schools, the SROs, the districts, the schools, and the SROs. I think communication is going to be key. I think that's how the understanding of our jobs is going to be most defined, kind of, and understood, is through the communication.
Yeah, I'll just say that for anybody, watching this around here, please don't hesitate to come up and talk to us. We like the one-on-one, interpersonal, talkings with people. So that's when you get to know somebody the best, I think, is when you can come up and talk to us in a small group or one-on-one. And I'm always open to that. Or like John said, our office is always open as well.
Great. Anything else?
Thank you for being on here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I really want to thank Christy, Shannon, and Mary Ellen for showing up. I hope the information's been beneficial for you. This will be recorded, so hopefully it will reach more viewers and listeners. I'm just posting some email addresses for Zinnia here, Director of Equity Inclusion. That should say Jarvis, I think, Assistant Director of Operations, and then Stace, Director of Safety and Security at Tigard-Tualatin School District. So those emails are available there for you to reach out to those people if you have any additional questions. But I really thank everybody for spending part of your day with us to get more information from our SROs, and I really appreciate you all. Any other questions from Christy, Shannon, Mary Ellen?
Nope, we're good. I'm good.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the work you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.